Hello, math friends. Today we're going to be ordering rational numbers. If you haven't already, make sure to go to the link below to download the resource from Teachers Pay Teachers. The resource includes vocabulary, a warm up, teacher model, partner practice, independent practice, and the answer key. I'm going to be walking you through each part and how I would teach this lesson and how I would prepare to teach my students how to order rational numbers. I hope this is helpful for you. What we're going to do is we're going to start out with some vocabulary. We're going to have the students, I'm going to give them just 1 minute independently and silently to do the following things. One, they're going to circle the words that mean the biggest number. So I tell the students, okay, everybody, we're going to circle the words that mean biggest. So I say circle, you say biggest, and they would call and respond. Now we're going to have students box words that all mean the smallest number. So I'm going to tell students, everybody say box, everybody say smallest. The call and response is really great for our emergent bilinguals, and this is just a great way to get them thinking. So I'm going to give them 1 minute. I'm going to say you're going to do this independently and silently. So I'm going to go ahead and do this for you. The biggest numbers would be the largest, the greatest, the biggest, and this one is tricky here. When you see fastest and slowest, kids often think is the slowest is the lowest number, but it's actually going to be our biggest number. So when we go to see the problems that have like timing, like races and things like that, this is where kids get tripped up a lot. So we want to acknowledge that when we talk about things that are the slowest, that are actually going to be the biggest numbers. So then that leaves that the least, smallest, and fastest will all be our smallest numbers when it comes to ordering numbers. Now I'm going to have students on their own, just to get them started, as something very easy to scaffold up into something more challenging. I'm going to give them 2 minutes right now on their own to do the following 3 things. The first thing they're going to do is they're going to order the basketballs from smallest to biggest. You want to get kids in the habit of identifying what the question is asking. We're going from smallest, that's the number 1, biggest is number 5. The next question asks them, order the numbers from the graduated cylinders from biggest, number 3, to smallest, number 1. And then the last, we are going to go from least to greatest. When the kids see these, they often get mixed up a little bit. And so we want to have students get in the habit of writing a word that means something more realistic to them. So I might have them write small to big. And this is good for kids that are learning English because it's going to break down that word for them. So I'm going to give kids 2 minutes right now, silent and independent. I would tell them just do their best. It's okay if you don't know all of the answers. So once they have 2 minutes, you're going to circulate around and start checking work just to see what misunderstandings they're having. So the smallest, biggest, I would just call on one student. Maybe this is a student that might be might have a hard time later. This will give them some confidence. So I would call on them, especially if you've already seen their paper, you've seen them get this right. It's just a good way to get them involved and help them to feel confident. So we have the biggest graduated cylinder here is 3, and then 2 and 1. This is a great reference to their science class because they're going to use science with the graduated cylinders, and it's going to help them see, oh, I actually need this in other contents, which is really important and helpful to get that cross-content collaboration. And the last one, we have the least to greatest. So I'm going to put these in order from smallest to largest. We have 1. I'm going to cross it out when I'm done with it. It's a good habit to get kids into. 3, 7, 16, and 25. Cross that out. I might ask kids questions like, what was easy about this? What was hard about it? What do you have questions about? The next thing we're going to do is we're going to get into one of the basic skills, which is plotting numbers on a number line. This is going to help kids start to visualize where numbers fall in relation to each other. You'll also see that I scaffolded these up from easier to medium to hardest. You're also going to see that I included negative numbers with decimals because on the STAR exam, they will see negative numbers, they will see decimals and fractions, which we'll get to in just a little bit. So I'm going to have students follow along with me on the first one. I'm going to read it out loud. Plot the following numbers on the number line, then order from least to greatest. Okay, I see least to greatest. I'm going to write smallest to biggest. Okay, now I'm going to have students follow along with me and I'm going to model for this one first. Okay, I'm going to plot the following numbers here on this number line. I see 0, so I'm going to plot it right on the 0. Then I'm going to say I have 4. Actually don't see 5 on the number line, but I know it will go right here. I have -3 and I have -1. So that is actually not enough because the question's also asking me to order from least to greatest. So I'm going to look at the dots and I'm going to say I've got -3, -1, 0, 4, and 5. Okay, I'm going to have the kids try this next one on their own. I'm going to give them just 30 seconds right now to try this on their own independently and silently. This will give you an idea of where kids are starting to get the concept or they might be getting stuck because they are going to start seeing these negatives with the decimals and those can get kind of tricky. So when I bring it back together, I see I've got -1.5, -3.2, 1.5, and 3.8. This could be, if you have a whiteboard, you could have a kid come and plot this on the paper for you or on the whiteboard for you, and that would be a great way to get them involved. After I plot, I'm going to go back and I'm going to write -3.2, -1.5, then I'm going to have 1.5 and 3.8. Sorry, those are a little off on the lines there, but that's okay. And the last one, I would have them again do it by themselves. You want to get them in the habit of at least trying it by themselves so you can get an idea. And then you are going to, you can let them on this one, have them talk to a partner before you call on somebody. So again, I'm going to let students answer on their own. I've got 0.5, I've got 4.5, -75 hundredths, 1, and -3.8. So I'm going to put those from left to right, least to greatest. I'm going to commas here to make it more clear. Okay, -7.5, then I've got 0.5, 0.5, then I have 1, then I have 4.5. It's really key for you to point out to students that the smallest numbers are the most negative. You can have kids write this, you can have them repeat it, but we want to get them in the habit of knowing that if I'm further to the left on the number line, that means my numbers are going to be smaller. If I'm farther to the right on the number line, my numbers are going to be bigger. Kids really struggle with understanding. They see, like, for example, they'll see -3.8 and they'll always think that this is bigger than, for example, 1 because they just see 3.8 and they're thinking about absolute value and not it as a positive or negative number. So we really want to stress that here. Then we're going to go to the back. After you've established the ordering of decimals, we're going to increase the rigor a little bit. So we're going to start seeing different variations of the same number. So if you haven't taught them yet converting, that would be a great thing to do before doing this. That is a prerequisite skill, and you should have already covered that because you definitely are going to need that in this next section. So when we're going to be ordering numbers, I find it's best that we convert all numbers to a decimal first. This is really important, and we're going to have kids over and over repeat this. Always convert to a what? A decimal. Say it over and over so they don't forget it. Then I'm going to have us do this together. So I'm going to say, okay, I've got 60% here. I see that that's not in decimal format because I see a percentage sign. So I know that there is an imaginary decimal behind the 0, and I'm going to move 2 to the left. 1, 2, which will give me 0.60. Next, I have 4 over 5. 4 over 5 is not in decimal format, so I need you to convert to a decimal. I know that I can convert to a decimal by making my denominator 100. I'm going to use scale factor times 20 times 20, which will give me 80 over 100. 80 over 100 is the same thing as 80 hundredths as a decimal. 0.05, oh wait, that's actually already as a decimal. I don't need to change that. I can keep it as is. You can, if you want, if you feel comfortable with your students being okay with this part here, you can have them do this on their own. They might get a little bit confused here because they'll see, oh, I have a decimal, it's in decimal format. But anytime you see a percentage, you have to move your decimal 2 numbers to the left. 0.765. It's okay that there are 3 numbers here. That just means this in the thousands. Same thing with this decimal, this fraction is the other one. I'm going to convert, times 5 is going to give me 30 over 100, and I have 0.3. You can do 0.30. And then the last one is already as a decimal. I like to get kids in the habit of putting zeros in front of their decimals because that is something that will help them in their later classes, like in high school when you just start to see a lot more complex numbers. It's also like the most correct way to write things. So after we've established this skill here, we want to start letting them see it in a more complex format. This is starting to get them ready to answer the word problems here down below. So I'm going to model for them here. I'm going to do a teacher model again. And I'm going to tell students, you should write what I write and you should be following along. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look to read the question. I'm going to order the following numbers from greatest to least. So I'm going to do biggest to smallest. Okay. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see what format my numbers are in. I see that they're in all different formats, which is probably going to happen with the word problems that you're going to see. So it's good that we're getting this started. I'm going to write all of my original numbers over here in a table. And you can tell kids, if you don't see a table, you can make a table. And that's a great habit for them to get in as well. Then I'm going to convert all of them to a decimal, and I have some space here if I need it. I'm going to convert this percentage to a decimal, 0.76. This one's already in a decimal, 0.73. 3/4 as a decimal is a standard fraction that they should know, or you can do 3/4 equals 100 times 25 times 25 is another way to do that. And then this is also already a decimal, so we're just going to rewrite it here. The thing that we want kids to get in the habit of is lining up their decimals. So after we converted them all to decimal format, we are going to write, line up their decimals. So it's going to look like this. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to line up with any zeros for any of the numbers that are not to the same place value as my longest number. So I see that this one has 3, the others have 2, so I just added zeros behind. It does not change the value. So I know that going from left, I'm going to go from left to right when it comes to comparing my numbers. So I have zeros here, can't do anything with that, 7, 7, 7, 0. So I see that this one is the smallest. So I know I'm just going to go ahead and put a 4 right here because that's going to be my smallest number. Now, okay, I've done this one. Now I've got 6, 6, 3, and 5. What is my next smallest number here? If we've already got our smallest one there, the next smallest one would be the 3. So that's going to be my third. And did these already. And then my next biggest one is going to be 0.75. And then I see that my largest one is going to be 0.76. So it would be nice if they just asked us to do that. But a lot of the questions will ask you to rewrite it in original form. So I'm going to go back. It says biggest to least, or greatest to least, or biggest to smallest. So I know that my greatest one is 0.76. And that in the original form was 76%. I'm going to cross it out just so I don't forget it. My next biggest one is 0.75, but my original format was 3/4, so I'm going to cross that out. My next biggest one was 0.73, and that was already in 0.73. And then my last one is 0.78, 0.078, not sure what I said, but there we go. Okay, that is going to be rewritten in the original form like that. Okay, jumping ahead to this next one here. If you feel confident that your students can do this one by themselves, great. If you need to walk them through it again, that's also fine. They're not really expected to be able to do this on themselves yet. So this could be a great opportunity for you to model your thinking and show your thinking again. This one is a little bit more rigorous because, as you can see, they're all negative values. So what I went ahead and did is I went ahead and filled out this table and set up the alignment for the decimal. So I already did my steps of converting everything to a decimal. Then I made sure that everything was lined up nice and neat so that I could start ordering. So like I said earlier, kids get really tripped up with negative numbers because the smallest and largest doesn't quite click to them with the negative. So I'm going from smallest to largest here. And so what I want to think about is I'm going to think of like furthest to the left on the number line, and then largest is the furthest to the right on the number line. So I've got 0.56 here. What I did is I went and set up a number line. Here's the whole number 5, and here's the whole number 6. Well, it's not a whole number, it's an integer, but the integer -5 and -6. So I'm going to plot these numbers, and I did 10 tick marks to show that there were tenths here. So I have -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is -0.56. I've got -0.50, -0.51, and -0.52. So I can see here that the furthest number to the left is -0.56, which was that original number was the same, -0.56. I'm done with that one. Then I have -0.52. Then I have -0.51, which originally was -51%. And that leaves me the last one, which is -1/2. And that would be the final original form from smallest to largest. Now we're going to model a word problem, because in reality, this is most likely what your students are going to see for STAR. So again, you're going to want to set the expectation. Okay, I'm going to read through everything here. You're going to follow along with me and write what I write. So the teacher model here, I'm going to read out loud. So because I want students to do everything that I do when they do it on their own. Students in Miss Baker's class must complete at least 40 math problems for homework every week. The table shows the progress of 4 students on Wednesday. Which list shows the amounts of homework completed in order from greatest to least? So it's asking me from biggest to smallest. I see that I have a varying types of numbers over here. So I know that the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to need to convert all of them to decimals. So let's go ahead and do that here. So I already have a table, so I can actually just work off to the side. This one's going to stay the same, 0.4. This one is a little bit tricky because it is 45 over 40, so it's not a nice and neat fraction. So what I would likely do is I'm going to simplify first. So to simplify, I can divide both of these by 5, and that's going to give me 9 over 8. This doesn't give me a nice neat fraction, so I am going to have to circle back to the skill of converting a fraction to a decimal. So I'm going to divide 9 by 8, and it's going to give me 1.125. And that is okay because it is going to be greater than 100. Again, these get more rigorous. It's okay if your students don't quite get this just yet, but this is great to show them the different types of decimals and fractions that they're going to see. We know 100 is a decimal is 1.0, and we know that we're going to have to line all these up anyway. I'm going to have to reline these up because they're not very pretty. And then 2/3 is not a pretty decimal, but I know it's going to give me 0.666 repeating. So let's go back over here. I'm going to line these up nicer because it bothers me when they're not lined up. So I've got 0.400. I've got 1.125. I have 1. And I have 0.666 repeating. Okay, so I know that I'm going back and I'm going to biggest to smallest. I see that this is my biggest number here. It is greater than 1. Then I have 1, 3, and 4. So let's go back. I know that 1.125 is 45 over 50. And so, oh, look at that. I know that if I look at my first answer choices, answer choice B is the only answer choice that has 45 over 40 first. And then I can just double check, okay, 100, 2/3, and 4/10. Great. You can also point out to students that answer choice A here is a distractor. Why? It's because this number these go from smallest to biggest, and that will be true for almost every word problem. They're always going to try to trick you to make sure that you're reading from biggest to smallest. So we're going to have students then move to some partner practice. So before you go to partner practice, you're going to want to show them this following criteria for success. These are the things that I should see you doing and the things that I should see on your paper. I should see you reading the question first, the whole thing. Then I should see you annotating the question, determining what it is asking you to do. Is it biggest to smallest? Is it smallest to biggest? So on and so forth. You need to write that down in your own words, what it's asking you, just like I did on mine. Then we're going to convert all the numbers to decimals, show all of your work, eliminate any answer choices, and I'm going to need you to double check your work. We're going to be on task, only talking to our partner, and you can give them the voice levels if you have that. They have 3 questions to do. I usually give kids about 3 minutes per question. This will give you 9. So overall, you could give them 10 minutes, and I might even chunk it to say everybody has 3 minutes right now to do this first question. I find that kids often do better when they have shorter time periods, but it just depends on you and your class. So you're going to give kids 10 minutes right now to work with their partner. Everybody should be working. Everybody's got their pencils up, and they should use your models that we just did to help them here if they get stuck. You should be circulating to check, are they doing the table? Are they converting correctly? Are they lining up the numbers? And you should be giving them pen to paper feedback. So, okay, here are the correct answers for these. If I were you, I would pick one of them that you saw the most kids mess up and go over that one together. Especially those, this one has the negative, so that could be challenging, but it's just based on what you saw when you were circulating with students. So now what they're going to do is they're going to work on their own. They should use your model, they should use their partner work, and they're going to do this independently and silently because this is how they know that they are ready to do this on a exit ticket, a formative assessment, or on a summative assessment like a unit exam. So you're going to give kids, again, I would give them about 10 minutes. You're going to say, I'm going to be independent and silent. You're going to be independent and silent as you work. I'm going to circulate to check answers. Remind them that these are the things that they should see on your paper. You should see on their paper, sorry, so that you can check to make sure that they are doing it correctly. The thing that I would definitely go over before you release them is I would talk about number 5. And number 5, remember back in the vocabulary when we talked about timing, remind kids that the longest time, that is going to be our biggest number. Our shortest time is going to be our smallest number. And it's okay if you tell kids that ahead of time. But it is something that I think kids will get tripped up on, and they should definitely still be showing all of their work, and you should be circulating to check for student answers. Okay, here are the final answers for this one. Again, I would go through things that you saw the kids doing well, give them some shout outs, show them the answers, after you've checked everybody's work, and then pick one that you saw the most errors in and go over that one as a class, or have a student explain it if you feel like that they're ready to do so. And yeah, so you are welcome to use this lesson as is. You could also like print and chunk these and use them as task cards, however you see fit. But again, you can find the link to this exact resource on the link below at the Teachers Pay Teachers resource. And I hope it works well for you, and I know that your kids are going to do great. Thanks for joining.